Hi guys. Okay, so we are going to go on to 0.2 in our review unit of very short unit of like 2 lessons. That's all it really is. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about today is the quadratic formula and solving quadratics by using that. So where I am is I am on the second page of this blue notes packet. So we did the first one. Here's the second one, and I want for you may have to pause me to fill all this in. But here is the quadratic formula that you have to memorize. I'm going to put a link to Pop Goes the Weasel song that has this, if that helps you memorize it, but negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a is the formula. So tips for simplifying this quadratic formula: use parentheses when you plug in b squared minus 4ac. You also need to use parentheses when you plug in b squared into your calculator. Otherwise, it may give you the wrong answer. Or if you can do that in your head, sometimes that's better than using the calculator for that. You're going to simplify the discriminant. This guy in here is what we call the discriminant. That just the b squared minus 4ac, not including the square root. We call it the discriminant, and the definition of the discriminant, or what the discriminant does, is it allows you to find how many solutions you're actually going to have to the equation. So if we think about finding our zeros, we talked about where it crosses the x-axis. So a parabola could cross the x-axis in 2 spots, which would mean we have 2 solutions. A parabola could cross the x-axis in 1 spot, which would mean that we have 1 solution. Or the parabola may never cross the x-axis, which means we have 0 solutions. The discriminant will tell us if we have 2 solutions, 1 solution, or 0 solutions. That's the point of the discriminant. So we're going to simplify that before we apply the square root, then we apply the square root, and then we break into 2 expressions by splitting the negative b plus and the negative b minus. So this guy right here, where we have to add that and then subtract that. Then we simplify the numerator, and then we divide by the 2a. So we're going to do this together. So here's an equation. First thing you're going to do is you're going to get it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides from its like terms, and I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get 0 equals 3x squared minus 6x minus 45. You'll probably need a calculator for this. I do not want for you to be using your Chromebook calculator unless you downloaded the graphing calculator, and I do not want for you to be using your cell phone calculator. What I would like for you to get are these calculators. And the reason being, a lot of you I know coming from middle school have like the yellow calculators with gray or blue on them, but those do radicals and reduce radicals for you, and they do a lot of things for you that I want for you to know how to do without the calculator. So that's why I like these. And this is what all the math teachers here at West use, just so you know. I saw them at Target. They were on sale. I think they're $9, $10, $11 is what I believe that they are. So if you're able to get one, that would be fantastic. If you're not, I understand. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do, once I have solved for that, gotten everything to one side, and set it equal to 0, I'm going to actually list out what my A value is, my B value, and my C value. So A, B, C. A is a positive 3, B is a negative 6, and C is a negative 45. It's very important that you bring the sign with it. Once I've done that, I can then plug into this equation right here. So I'm going to do negative 6. So this is saying the opposite of what B is. Well, the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6. So since I already have a negative, 2 negatives make a positive. So that's really positive 6. I'm going to plus or minus big square root, and now the discriminant, b squared. Put this into parentheses. The reason being, if I type this into my calculator, if I do negative 6 squared, it gives me a negative 36, because what my calculator is doing, and this is very important for you guys to hear because I get this question throughout the year, my calculator is squaring the 6 and then throwing the negative sign on. But what we really want it to do is we want it to square the whole negative 6, the whole thing in the parentheses. So I want the negative to be squared also, so that's why I'm putting in parentheses. Then you'll get the correct answer of 36. Minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is negative 45. All that over 2 times A. So then you start reducing this. So what I'm going to reduce first is I'm going to reduce what's in the discriminant. So I'm going to keep the 6 plus or minus big square root. Negative 6 squared is 36. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 45. It's a big number. It's 540. That's a positive now 540, so I took care of the negative signs. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. This is where we have our two equations now. We have a positive or plus equation, so I do, oh, not yet, not yet. I'm ahead of myself. Now what I need to do is I need to add 36 plus 540, so we get 576. And then I'm going to take the square root of that. Second square root of 576, and I get 24. So I get 6 plus or minus 24 all over 6. Now, this is when we have our two equations. We've got two different colors. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell they're two different colors. The first equation is where I do 6 plus 24 over 6. The second equation is where I do 6 minus 24 over 6. To solve what looks like fractions, we always do what's on top, then divide by the bottom. So 6 plus 24 is 30. 30 divided by 6 is 5. So that's one answer. 6 minus 24 is negative 18. Negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3. So x equals those. Remember, as points, it's 5, 0, and negative 3, 0. Okay? So those would be my 2 points. That means it crosses the x-axis twice. That means if I go back up to these pictures, it would be a parabola that crossed twice. Okay? I want for you to pause me and try B on your own. Once you're done doing B, go ahead and unpause me and see if you did it correctly. So on B, everything's on the same side. So A value is 4. B value here is negative 12. And C, we don't have a C, so it's 0. So I'm going to do negative negative 12. So that's a positive 12 plus or minus big square root. B squared be negative 12 squared minus 4 times A times C of 0. Okay? All that over 2A, so that's 2 times 4. All right. Start reducing. So I get 12 plus or minus big square root. Negative 12 squared, so that's like 12 squares, 144. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16 times 0 is 0. So really it's plus 0. All over 2 times 4, which is 8. Well, this is just really 144. So what I actually have is 12 plus or minus the square root of 144, which is 12 over 8. Two equations. 12 plus 12 over 8. 12 minus 12 over 8. 12 minus 12 is 0. 0 divided by 8 is just 0. 0 is the solution. It's not saying that there's no solution. It's saying it crosses the x-axis at 0, 0. Okay? 12 plus 12 is 24. 24 divided by 8 is 3. So 3 is my solution, or 3, 0. So that is that one. Okay. What I want you guys to notice is those two problems were actually these two problems that we did by factoring. And we got the same answer there and here. What I want you to notice is that the quadratic formula sometimes takes a little bit longer. Since they gave us whole number answers, what that means is that I could have actually used the factoring method on them because they gave us whole number answers. Quadratic formula works for any quadratic. I could use any quadratic, plug it into the quadratic formula. It will always give me an answer. But it may not always be the best time to use a quadratic formula. For instance, on these two problems, the best method would be the factoring method because it should take us less time in the factoring method than the quadratic formula method. Okay? All right, let's go to the next page. At the top, we're talking about the discriminant. I briefly talked about that on the previous page. Remember, the discriminant is the part under the square root, so the b squared minus 4ac. So if I take those and I figure out that b squared minus 4ac is bigger than 0, so just that part under the square root. So for instance, if I if I go backwards real quick, and I see that the part under the square root is 144 on this one. It's not 12 because we're not taking the square root. That's a positive number bigger than 0. Here, my discriminant was 576. 576 is a positive number bigger than 0. That means I have 2 solutions, which proves to be true because I had 2 solutions here and I had 2 solutions here. But if I take the discriminant, and the discriminant actually equals 0, what that means is that I have one solution. So on a quadratic, if I were going to graph this, that would mean that it hit the x-axis at one point. So that is if your discriminant equals 0. If your discriminant is smaller than 0, you actually have no intersections with the x-axis. It has no zeros. If it's a perfect square number, so for instance, this is a perfect square number, the 576, because I could take the square root of it, it gave me a whole number. 144 is a perfect square number, because when I take the square root of it, I get a whole number of 12. If it's a perfect square number, then the quadratic was factorable, which is what I was talking about earlier, how we did those examples on the first note page, and they were factorable. Okay, so prove whether the quadratic equation will have 1, 2, or no real roots. So what we're going to do to solve that is we're going to take it and put it into the discriminant. A, B, and C is my first step. What is the value of A, do you think? Remember, A is before the square root, or the x squared. In this case, when there's nothing there, but there's an x squared there, it is 1. It's the number. It's an invisible 1, because you don't have to have 1 there. There's no B middle term because there's no x value. There is a C of negative 25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug into B squared minus 4AC. Okay? So B squared is 0 squared minus 4 times A times C. Well, 0 squared is just 0. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 25 is a positive 100. 0 plus 100 is 100. So that's your discriminant. So that is bigger than 0, so it will have 2 real roots. Meaning I could solve that. Okay? 100 is a perfect square, so that means that it's factorable. If I look at this guy, the easiest way to solve this would be to get x squared by itself. So to add 25 to both sides, so I get x squared equals 25, and then I'm going to square root it. Square root it. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 25 is a positive or negative 5. That's what your zero, those would be your zeros at 5 and negative 5. Okay? Here, how many roots or possible solutions do I have? So we're going to list A, B, and C. A is equal to negative 2. B is equal to 1, and C is equal to negative 6. So I'm going to do negative. No, I'm not going to do negative. I'm sorry. I'm going to do B squared, 1 squared, minus 4 times A times C. Okay? 1 squared is just 1. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Positive 8 times negative 8 is negative 64. So 1 minus 64 is equal to negative 63. 63 is a negative number. It's a negative discriminant. So B squared minus 4AC is smaller than 0. So that means this one has no real roots. It means it will not cross the x-axis when I draw the parabola. All right, so what I need for you to do is write down 2 things you learned about solving quadratics and 1 thing that you still have questions about. Go ahead and write that down there. We will come to that during our small group meeting on first hour. You guys have your small group meeting on Monday morning. And second hour, you guys have your small group meeting on Tuesday morning. So I will see you then. Bye, guys.